Let's tie an egg fly. This fly is a fly that I probably get asked about as much as anything else, and as simple as these flies are, it's sort of a trick to tie them. There's a few different techniques out there to do them, and what I'll show you here is going to be what I've come up with as the best way to do it, at least for me. The materials that I'll use for this fly, it's going to start off with a TIEMCO 2488H, which is a stout heavy wire hook, short shank, wide gap, with a real heavy wire. A lot of times you're fishing eggs to bigger fish, fishing heavier tippets. So I like to use that heavier wire hook just because it holds up better to the fish. I'm going to use gel spun thread in 50 denier to tie this fly. Gel spun thread is gel spun polyethylene. It's very strong. It's like a spider wire or a super braid line. Very strong, very thin. So I can really crank this material down tightly without a whole lot of bulk. The material I'll use for the egg itself is called MCFLYFOAM. MCFLYFOAM is a stretchy nylon material, a little different than conventional egg yarn. You can use conventional egg yarn to tie this fly just as easily. I do think this compresses down a little easier and makes the tie down a little more seamless in the middle of the fly. So I've kind of turned to the MCFLYFOAM for all my egg flies, but you can use either. What I've done here, we're going to do an egg with two different colors. We're going to put a yolk in the center of it. So I've got this lighter pink color that I'm going to do the main portion of the egg with a little stripe of orange that I'm going to put in to make the yolk. So I'll set those aside for right now, and I'm just going to start my thread and get a thread base on here. So I'll start the thread just behind the hook eye. I'm going to wrap back over about the front half of the hook shank, and then I'll come forward again to the hook eye and back again about halfway down. So I'm a quarter of the way down the hook shank now, the middle of that front half. That's where I'm going to tie my yarn down. And the easiest way to explain this is if you tie this egg yarn in like you would a set of spinner wings, which we'll do at some point here on the video on a couple different patterns, but we're going to tie this in with some X-wraps. Now what I've done is I've got a relatively large diameter clump of the main body color and a much smaller clump of the yolk color, and I'll just stack them on top of each other. Now one trick that I'll do that makes this go a lot easier is I'll kind of take this and twist it down a little bit to start, just to kind of bow tie that out a little bit. And I've got to pinch it there. It's not going to stay there, but that'll make it go tie in a little bit easier. So I'm going to lay that right in right where my thread's hanging on the hook, and I'm going to take two turns, one right over the top of the other, and tighten that toward me. So I've just got the egg yarn tied down on top of the hook. I'm going to twist it now so it's perpendicular to the hook shank. And I'm going to take a couple wraps diagonal through the center. And this is forming an X-wrap down the center of the fly. And I want to make sure that that wrap stays good and tight and small in there with as little bulk as I can get away with. I'm then going to take the thread just up and over the shank and I'll whip finish there. So very little thread work on this fly. It's all about where this is tied in. Now, conventionally, eggs are tied with a clump of yarn just tied on top of the hook, and I'm sure we've all tied the turtle egg that comes out just a half round on top of the shank. To get a nice round egg, what we're doing here is we're ending up with two half eggs on either side of the hook that will come together on the bottom. So I've got this X-wrapped on top of the hook shank. I'm going to lift this up, and I'm not going to twist this. It's a very common technique to try to grab this and give it a little bit of a twist. You want to make sure that you pull this straight up and tight, and I'm going to, however big I want my egg, if I want it real big I could cut way up here. If I want it smaller I'm going to cut down closer to the hook shank. But I'm come in with a good sharp pair of scissors and make one cut, and that yarn will puff right around the hook into a perfect little ball. About the easiest way I've seen to do it, uses very little material. That MCFLYFOAM greatly contributes to the ease with which you can tie that, but that's the best way I've seen to tie an egg.